You're listening to the Fierce Fatty Podcast, episode 159, Anti-Fat Bias in the Workplace. I'm your host, Vinny Wellesby. Let's do it!
Perfect.
Hello, welcome to this episode, Fierce Fatty or Fierce Fatty Ally. Welcome, so glad that you're here. Thanks for all your Ko-fi donations. You are awesome. I'll let you know where we're at. So, goal for every month is $680 to sustain the show advert free. Each show costs me around $170 at least to create, and that's not factoring in my time or labor. And so far, one-off donations, I've had $310, and subscriptions, $55. Amazing. So $55 a month in subscriptions. And so what we want to get to is $680. And for $5, just $5 a month, you can give more if you want. You can give 10, 15. I don't know if you can give more than that. I don't think people want to give more than that. But if you want to just give $5 a month, you will get the Size Diversity Resource Guide, which is incredible, has tons of people to follow, shows to listen to, where to shop, all that type of stuff. You'll get that as a thank you. And I'm going to poll my Instagram audience and see what else you want. So what other free shit you want? Do you want the podcast early? Is that of interest to you? Like a week early or something, or a few days early? We can do that for subscribers. And if you just want to do a one-off donation, absolutely wonderful. Thank you for that. And for everyone who's already donated. One person donated $100. I almost shit my pants when I saw that. I was like, oh! Amazing. So today's episode is, by the way, to go to Ko-fi show notes, or you can go to Ko-fi/Fierce Fatty and you'll find my page. But you can just go to show notes and there'll be, to get to the tier thing, it's Fierce Fatty /tiers. But anyway, in the show notes, blah, blah, blah. It's episode 159. So for the show notes for everything that we're going to be talking about today, links to all the science and all that jazz, fiercefatty.com/159. Okay, so today what we're going to be talking about is anti-fat bias in the workplace. Do you have a job? Have you ever had a job? Are you ever going to have a job? Live in a fat body? Well, have I got something for you? We're going to be talking about two parts today. First part are the studies on anti-fat bias in the workplace, and the second part is my favorite, is hearing from you, your stories of fat phobia in the workplace. And yeah, get ready to be annoyed. So if that isn't feeling good for you today, then skip this episode. If you're like, I don't want to hear about anti-fat bias in the workplace, I've got it everywhere around me already. But if you want to know, then stay tuned. If you work somewhere and you have any type of HR person or any type of manager, or if you are interested in bringing this to your team, I do training for companies called Detangling Anti-Fat Bias from the Workplace. And so you can have me come in, or you can ask someone to bring me in. A few weeks ago, I did a large health authority in Ontario. So a lot of healthcare providers, doctors, etc. And I just got the feedback and it was incredible. I was just like, shut up. Oh my gosh. All these people saying, oh my goodness, I never knew that about the BMI, or I never knew that people can't lose weight, or I never knew about the language. And now I'm going to do different. And actually they have created an affinity group. So they've created a group of people in the organization to action the suggestions that I made. It's so exciting. So if you know of anyone, feel free to email them and say, hey, can we have some anti-fat bias training? I know someone, Vinny, they are incredibly sexually attractive. And that is the only criteria we need to know about a presenter coming into the company. Or if, here's an idea, if you're like, you don't want to because, you're not friends with the person or you don't feel comfortable, you can always email me and tell me who I should contact and their email. And I can email them and be like, hey, do you need anti-fat bias training? Or like if your manager is a raging fat phobe, and I can email them saying, hey, just out of the blue. I do that anyways, I'll email people saying, hey, do you want this? So that's not a strange thing for me to do. So if you want to do that, email me, fatty@fiercefatty.com, or send them my consulting website, which is fiercefattyconsulting.com. It's more, professional. There's not too much swearing on it and stuff compared to my normal stuff. Yeah. So let's talk about studies. By the way, I was away for a week because the last few episodes were big. That one with my mum had like 3 hours of audio that my the podcast team had to go through. So I gave them a week off because it was a lot that they did. So that was why I was away for a week. Someone messaged me and said I missed you, and I was like, oh, thank you. Someone noticed that I was not there. Okay, so let's talk about the study. So I'm going to give you a soundbite and then go into what the study actually says. So stats for you. Stats. Ready for stats. Overall, participants reported negative implicit and explicit attitudes towards O-word and the belief that O-word is controllable. So this is a study. Again, everything is going to be linked in the show notes. This is a study called O-word discrimination in the recruitment process. You're not hired. So I'm going to read the abstract here from what they've done, what they're saying, what they're talking about. Okay. Previous literature reports that fat persons, they say the O-word throughout. So trigger warning, if you are going to go to the links, they're going to be using O-words, but I'm going to say fat instead of O-word. Previous literature reports that fat persons are discriminated in the workplace. Evidence suggests that fat people are perceived as having less leadership potential, and in comparison to straight-sized peers, are expected to be less successful. This study examined whether fat people are discriminated against when applying for employment. 3 hypotheses were offered in line with previous research. 1, fat people are less likely to be assessed positively on personnel suitability than straight-sized people. 2, fat people in active employment are more likely to be discriminated against than people in non-active employment. And 3, fat women are more likely to just be discriminated against than fat men. 181 participants were sampled from sedentary, standing, and manual and heavy manual occupations. So participants, these are the people who are rating people for if they're going to hire them or not. And they work in sedentary, standing, or manual, heavy manual jobs. Employees also completed measures of implicit and explicit attitudes towards fatness. MANOVA was conducted to examine if fat candidates were discriminated against during the recruitment procedure. Results just demonstrated that participants rated fat candidates as less suitable compared with straight-sized candidates, and when the weight status of the candidate was not revealed for work across the four workplace groups. Participant gender and weight status also impacted perceptions of candidates' suitability for work, and discrimination towards fat candidates was higher in participants from more physically demanding occupations. The study findings contributes to evidence that fat people are discriminated against in the hiring process and support calls for policy development. Yes! I don't know if you know, but NAFA, with the help of FLAIR is the Fat Legal Advocacy Resource, something with let's guess, resource, explosion. Basically, it's Sandra Solovey, lawyer, leading a group of legal professionals to fight for fat rights. Love it. And in New York, they've had a hearing in the last couple of days to ban height and weight discrimination. Fingers crossed! It would be a huge win. Tigris Osborne, chair of NAFA, and other New York activists, I think even people came in who weren't from New York. I know Tigris is not from New York, to testify, and they're going to decide in the next month. I don't know, why do they take so long to decide something? Can't they just hear people say, hey, there's this problem with this thing, and then everyone just go, yeah, that sounds like a problem, let's fix it, instead of taking like a month to decide? I don't understand what's going on in that month. Anyway, whatever, there could be a law against that. I'm going to talk about what other laws we have shortly. Okay, the next thing we are looking at, which is this, I don't know if you've ever heard of this website, Fairy Godboss. Seems to be quite popular. I've never heard of it. But they did a survey. They asked 500 hiring professionals to view images of women and describe their professional appearance. These women had distinctly different hairstyles, outfits, skin tones, facial expressions, and body types. And what they found was that only 15.6% of respondents said that they would consider hiring a fat person. And then they show the image of the fat person. It's someone who's a small fat person. Sad face. So, quote from them. 20% of the hiring professionals we surveyed chose to describe the photo of the heaviest looking woman as, quote, lazy, while this adjective was selected less frequently for every other woman pictured. Additionally, 21% described her as unprofessional, and only 18% said she had leadership potential, and then only 15% said that they would hire her. Fun times. And this is a woman who is white. So there's a big flaw with a lot of this research, and I don't know if you spotted what the flaw is we do not have any gender variation. We have man, woman. We don't have gender non-conforming folks, trans people, non-binary people, etc. And I would hazard to suggest that if that person is also trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming in some way or the other, and if they are also black or disabled, then those stats, I bet you they will go tumbling down even lower. We don't have that information. There probably is somewhere, but I don't know if there is studies done on that intersection of trans identities and body size. There'll be studies around the other marginalized identities, but that combining of the trans and fat, I'm not aware of. But I bet you some very smart fat scholars will be doing that type of work. Okay, so when it comes to pay, do the thin win? This is from the American Psychological Association. What a snappy title. Don't they have to always name these things super boring science-y titles? Anyway, a quote from here. Cultivation theory suggests that society holds very different body standards for men versus women. And research indicates that the consequences of defying these social norms may not be linear. To test these notions in the employment context, we examined the relationship between weight and income to the degree to which the relationship varies by gender. For women, we theorized a negative weight-income relationship that is steepest at the thin end of the distribution. For men, we predicted a positive weight-income relationship until O word. And so until they were actually fat. where it then becomes negative. To test these hypotheses, we utilized two longitudinal studies, one German and one American. In study one, weight was measured over 2 time periods and earnings were averaged over the subsequent 5 years. Study two was a multi-level study in which weight and earnings were within individual variables observed over time, and gender was between individual variable. Results from the two studies generally support the hypothesis, even when examining within individual changes in weight over time. So the results of the two studies are generally support the hypothesis. So where it doesn't support the hypothesis is that when it comes to men getting to be fat, that their income goes down. What they found was, well, I'll tell you what they found. Let me tell you. Let me continue. What may be more surprising is the degree to which employers also seem to have internalized the notion that employees' weight matters. Okay, so they're talking about how people don't like fatties, and they're saying, I don't know why they're saying this. What may be surprising is that employers also have internalized that weight matters. Well, those same employers are the same people who were out in the public who think that fat people are bad. Just because they get into the job place doesn't mean they suddenly lose biases. Those biases will follow us at work, out of work. What may be surprising? It's not surprising. What may be not surprising is the degree to which employers also seem to have internalized the notion that employees' weight matters. Rowling's 1999 comprehensive review suggests that fat people are rated as being less desirable as subordinates, co-workers, and bosses, and they are viewed as less conscientious. What the fuck? Conscientious. There we go. Conscientious. No, it's conscientiousness. That's not right. It should be conscientious. They put a nus on the end. Anyway, viewed as less conscientiousness, less agreeable, less emotionally stable, and less extroverted than their straight-sized counterparts. Even though these stereotypes are inaccurate, thank you, it appears that in the United States, fat employees are viewed by their employers as lazy and lacking in self-discipline. Pull and Brownell and Rowling's reviews also revealed that fat women are consistently judged more harshly in the workplace than fat men, and reported that 60% of fat women and 40% of fat men describe themselves as having been discriminated against in the course of employment. Again, we don't have stats for fat GNC people. Study one. So they looked at two studies, one in Germany, one in the US, and it was interesting to see the differences between Germany and the US. So we've got a table here. I'm going to make a social media post with these tables and stuff, right? Okay, so in Germany, so I want you to imagine we have men and women on different points in this graph. So on one side, we have people who are, they measured everyone's weight, and the average weight they've put as 0. And then people who were 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 15 pounds, etc., less than that average weight. And their average weight was, I'm not going to say the weight, but it was the weight of a straight-sized person. So the average weight, and then we have from 0, we go +5, +10, +15, up to +25. So a woman who weighs 25 pounds less than the average earned the most. So at the time, that was 2,100 euros a month. And then we have the line just curves down. It slopes down to people who are 25 pounds heavier than the people who are at the average weight. Their earnings were, we don't see it exactly, but it looks like it's about 1,750. It's less than 1,800, so maybe 1,760. Yeah, so let's just say it's 1775. There we go, 1775. So we got over 2,100 for someone who is the smallest, and for the biggest in this we have 17. I can't remember what I just said after I made that big fuss of 1,700 euros a month. So the issues with this is we've stopped at 25 pounds over a straight-sized person. As we know, 25 pounds is not that much, but we can see a very clear line downwards, and it looks like it will continue moving down, 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 the higher, but we don't have that information. Now, what is interesting for the men are right up on this graph, and so the women were getting paid, the thinnest women were getting paid $2,100. The thinnest men were getting paid $2,600 plus. So already there's a difference in gender there. But it was the thinnest men, the men who were 25 pounds smaller than the average man, the thinnest men who were getting paid the least. And then it arcs. It's kind of like a small arc. It's not like an upside down U, but it's more like I'm here drawing with my finger, and you cannot see my finger, but it's kind of like a little curve up, and then kind of stabilizes and goes a little bit down. And where it stabilizes is about 10 pounds heavier than the average, and then it goes down. So it doesn't go down as low as the thinner people. It's similar to the 10 pounds overweight. There's not a big difference. So it's the difference between, $50 a month type of thing. But, it looks like if we carried on with that trajectory, it looks like the fattest men, the actual fat men, because these men that they're describing aren't really fat. The actual fat men, fat people, fat, medium fat, super size, infinity fat, etc., it looks like that line would then curve down. That's what it looks like it's going to happen. We don't have that data. Okay, so that was Germany. So Germany, it was interesting. So what they say, the results for study 1 reveal that for men, both heavier than average and thinner than average men learn less. Men who are 2 standard deviations below average weight earn $4,057 less. And men who are 2 standard deviations above average earn $146 less than the average man. However, these statistics also show that the penalty for being very thin is nearly 28 times for that for being very heavy. The results also show that very thin women earn the most, $3,981 more per year than their average weight counterparts. So that's average weight counterparts. For the fat counterparts is a lot more. Conversely, whereas relatively heavy women earn the least, $1,848 per year less than average weight women. A woman loses more than twice as much from going to very thin to average than going from average to relatively heavy. Yeah. So those very thin women, they are the people making the bucks in women. In the men, someone who is has a little bit of weight, 10 pounds over the average. So, I mean, that's nothing, right? They're the ones getting paid the most. Be interesting to see this looked at as well with other intersections, like if we're thinking about race and disability and all that type of stuff. That would be interesting to see too. Okay, so the American one it's wild. It is wild. It looks totally different from the other one. So we've got the 2 lines on the graph, one for men, one for women. We've got weight at the bottom, money on the side, just like the other one. But instead of the woman kind of just going down, down, down slowly, the woman's goes from, it's like freaking free fall. It goes from a woman who is 70 pounds smaller, is earning 63,000, it looks like, to someone who is 70 pounds bigger, earning 22 or 21,000, it looks like. So 63,000 for the smallest women to 22,000 for the smallest women, for the biggest women. I mean, gobsmacked. Like Germany, it's like, but the US is like, wow. He's like, vroom, down. And the same goes for the men, but the opposite direction. The smallest men are earning 35,000. The heaviest men, 70 pounds higher than the average, are earning 68,000, so more than the women, which is showing the same things, but even more dramatically. And it could be that it's showing more dramatically because we have a higher range. So we have 70 pounds either way, whereas the German one is 25 pounds either way, but it's still, even if you zoom in, it's still way more dramatic, which goes to show maybe the difference between German opinions and American opinions at that time on weight. I don't know, this is assumptions about culture. But yeah, it's not good. Okay, so what they say about it is, as the table shows, a decrease in weight of 2 standard deviations results in a predicted earnings decrement of 17,535 for men and a appreciated earnings increment of 22,283 for women. Conversely, an increased weight of 2 standard deviations result in a predicted earnings increment of 14,889 for men and a predicted earnings decrement of 18,902 for women. So that's only 2 standard deviations. So basically, leave America at once. Not just for that reason. I'm joking, am I? But I mean, Canada and the UK would probably look just the same. Okay. So next study. Here's a little snippet starting of it. If a woman was a stone heavier for no other reason than her genetics, this would lead to her having an income of £1,500 less per year than a comparable woman of the same height who was a stone lighter. Okay, so this is height, body mass index, and socioeconomic status. Mendelian randomization study in UK Biobank. So this is a British study. They looked at 119,669 men and women of British ancestry aged between 37 and 73 years old. And the results were, in the UK Biobank study, shorter stature, so shorter height and higher BMI, were observationally associated with several measures of lower socioeconomic status. The associations between shorter stature and lower socioeconomic status tended to be stronger in men, and the association between higher BMI and a lower socioeconomic status tended to be stronger in women. So what they're saying is that short men have worse outcomes, less money, get less of that money than short women. Fat women get less money than fat men. And the average, quote, average sized people are getting the most money. Actually, pause on that statement. Let's see exactly. For example, a 1 standard deviation higher BMI was associated with £210, that's €276 or $300, lower annual household income in men, and a £1,890 lower annual household income in women. So that's, no, they didn't give the conversion rate for the other currencies there. I don't know why they did that. Okay, genetic analysis provided evidence that these associations were partly causal. A genetically determined 1 standard deviation taller stature, 1 standard deviation is 6.3 centimeters, caused a 0.06 year older age of completing full-time education, a 1.7 to 1.18 times higher odds of working in skilled profession, higher annual household income. So if you're taller, you get better outcomes. Associations were stronger in men. A genetically determined 1 standard deviation higher BMI, so 1 standard deviation is 4.6 kilograms, caused a £2,940 lower annual household income and a 0.10 standard deviation higher level of deprivation in women only. Fun times. So actually, if a woman was a stone heavier, it would lead to having an income of £1,500. It's more than that, less than £1,500. Well, they're saying this is one standard deviation. That's 4.6 kilos. What's 4.6 kilos in pounds? In stone. 4.6 kilos in stone. 0.7 stone in pounds. LBS. 10 pounds, yeah. Okay, so not even... So less than the stone, 10 pounds... would create a 2,940 lower annual household income. Oh, I know. I think no, that's not why, is it? Why is it? Anyway, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Fat women get paid less. Shocking. According to research, over 40% of people with higher body weight report that they have experienced weight bias from employers and supervisors. So this is a paper from Rudd Center. So you can go check that out. Higher weight folks are less likely to be promoted, be company CEOs, and be in client-facing positions. So, quote from this. This is a weight bias in the workplace, a literature review. Qualitative reviews have concluded that individuals who are fat face weight bias and discrimination at every stage of the employment cycle. These reviews have identified evidence for weight bias across a variety of evaluative outcomes, including selection, placement, compensation, assignments, promotions, assessments, discipline, and termination. So they've looked at all of these different studies and they've pulled out what those studies have said. So there's a number of studies there. One of them, if we look at I'm just looking at one of them here. It's called Stigmatization of Fat Individuals by Human Resources Professionals, an experimental study. So what they did is they took 127 HR professionals and 42% of HR professionals disqualified fat females. Weight produced largest inequality in selection when choosing an individual for a supervisory position. So the worst outcomes was when they were being selected for a managerial job. HR people said, no thanks, we don't want the fatties. Okay, and so then I talked about this in New York about the discrimination laws. So where we're at with laws to protect fat people. How many countries in the world have national laws to protect against weight stigma? Have a guess. Is it A, 0, B, 1 to 5, or C, 6 to 10? What's your answer? If you said A, you would be correct. 0 countries in the world have any size discrimination laws. So a fat person can be terminated just because of their size, and there is no anti-discrimination laws to protect them in Canada or any country in the entire world. But we do if you're in the US. Good old US. Pulling through on this. In the US, Michigan and Washington, there is a law protecting fat folks from being fired due to size. And there's a few other places with protections. So there's no national laws. We've got a few, cities, jurisdictions that have protections. Michigan and Washington have laws. If you live in Michigan and Washington and you're fat, yay! If you get fired for being fat, you sue them motherfuckers. If you're fired for being fat, this is the way to go about it, which I really don't like, is to claim that fatness is a disability. And with the last episode, I could never do it. Because there's so much evidence of me saying fatness is not a disease. Can you imagine if I went to a court of law and was like, I'm fired because I'm fat and fatness is a disease, and the opposing counsel would be like, bitch, don't think so. Look at your 57,000 podcasts and posts about how it's not. I can't do it. But if that happens to you, fatness is a disability, but it won't always work. A lot of times it won't work, but that's the only recourse that you have. And you have to prove that the employer viewed your body size as a disability. Like that you asked for accommodations due to your body size. So say, for example, if you were like, I don't know, you're working in Amazon factory and you said, hey, supervisor, due to my weight, I would like to sit down for a portion of the day. And then the supervisor said, I know that your fatness is a disability, but and a disease, but I'm not going to allow you any accommodations. In fact, I'm going to fire you. And here, I've put it in writing for you. Then you can be like, okay, sounds like I can sue you for that. So just a heads up on that. I mean, I hate that we don't have things protecting us on body size. And as well, the one in New York is size and height, which I think is really important too. As we can see from these studies, short kings, short men, paid less. Okay, it's not good. Okay, so a roundup of the stats, because I said a lot of stuff there. Fat people are less likely to be hired in the first place. A 2017 survey found that when 500 hiring professionals were shown a picture of a larger-bodied woman, only 15.6% of them said that they would hire her. Fat people are paid less. Fat people are paid between $9,000 and $22,000 less a year than their smaller counterparts. They are also given pay increases less frequently than smaller colleagues. Fat people experience greater amounts of bias in the workplace. According to research, over 40% of people with high body weight report that they have experienced weight bias from employers and supervisors. Lack of visibility and promotion. Higher weight folks are less likely to be promoted, be company leaders, and be in client-facing positions. I'm going to make a post with all those stats in them so you don't have to frantically write them down or anything. And by the way, I haven't mentioned this in a while, just a heads up, we have a transcript for every episode of the podcast ever. And we're up to 159 now. So if you ever want a transcript, go to the show notes and there you have it. We've done that. Okay, so that's the stats. Let's hear your stories. I want to hear your stories. All right, so I asked in my Instagram stories, What's it like being fat at work? What have you experienced in the way of discrimination? And so here we've got some like short little answers and then we've got longer messages. First one, making us do, quote, health screening, including BMI measurement for our insurance. Yeah, that's fucked up. And obviously this is not every country in the world because not every country has insurance tied to employment. But a lot of places, a lot of people do. That is their reality, that insurance companies will deny people insurance. So insurance you get from your workplace, they will be denied insurance because of their weight and will get discounts, etc. for having a lower weight. Next, weight loss challenges at work disguised as health. A boss who openly made fat jokes. This is the one that really gets on my flaps, is weight loss challenges. Like, I'm like, what? Has no one got a fucking clue? This could be harmful. Even if they were like, well, we want fat people to get thin. Even if they hated all fat people. Can they not even consider that there are people who have a previous history of disordered eating or eating disorders? That, you know, if they can only extend compassion to thin people, that there are thin people who might have that history. So, like, fucking get a clue. Like, Jesus, it's so embarrassing. It's so 2002. Chairs not made for fat people. Lunchroom tables and chairs that were in a fixed position. Weight Watchers at work. Oh. Clients developing fat-phobic well-being programs. I don't even bring food to work anymore because someone will comment, oh, it's fucked up. Can you imagine? Oh, what you eating? Oh, did you know it's got so many calories? Oh, you shouldn't eat courgettes anymore. They've got toxins. Courgette, what do you call it in North America? Zucchini. I think I prefer the name courgette because it really lines with what a courgette is. It's like a foam. Courgette, core sounds foamy. That's what courgette is. And it should be put in the fucking trash can because they're fucking disgusting. Courgettes. Hate that shit. Anyway, I work in a female-dominated workplace. It's constant diet talk. It's so hard. Promoting diets and weight loss endlessly. Work-life balance equals discounts at gyms. Yeah. I remember when I was like, I can't believe they don't give us free membership to Weight Watchers and discounts at gym when I was in my dieting fat phobic stage. I was like, it's outrageous. If I had had any power at any company, it would be the most fat phobic fucking place ever when I was in my dieting. I'd be like making motherfuckers like do all sorts of shit. Thank God I never had any power. I just ruined the lives of the people around me. Continuing, they took away full fat milk. There are signs everywhere about how to lose weight. Women's uniforms don't come large enough. Men's, quote, will do. No, they won't do. Give me a fucking uniform so I can do my job. Women saying, at least I lost weight, as a benefit of getting seriously ill. Diet talk. People literally saying fat people are disgusting. Healthist attitudes. General treatment. Fatties tend to be overlooked and not taken seriously. Yes. Okay, so here's your longer comments. I worked at a youth centre and had to deal with a lot of anti-fat comments from staff. People refusing food because they, quote, didn't want to be a fatty, or talking about their latest diet. Had to address at a staff meeting. I was crying, recounting how dehumanizing people were being. Also, my clothing was covertly policed by someone in leadership for being unprofessional. It was fully because I was fat and she didn't like that I wore close-fitting clothes. I'm very open with my colleagues about fat phobia and my commitment to fat acceptance. One time my boss asked me if a chair in her office was comfortable for me, and it wasn't. So I told her, and we got me another chair. She's in a thin body, so for her to even think to ask me meant so much. On the flip side, there is a work conference in Europe this summer, and I probably can't go because it will be too complicated as I need 2 seats, so that sucks. 2 seats on the flight. Yeah, so actually that one I should have read last. I asked people, have you had fat positive experiences at work? And this was the only one. Out of all of the messages I got, that was the only one. But then, ends with a side of fat phobia of not being able to go to a work conference. Someone says, does it count as discrimination if you can't consistently get scrubs in an appropriate size? If so, then yes. Yes, it is discrimination if you cannot have the equipment that you need, aka clothes, to work. Blaming fatness for a health outcome, blaming lack of control or laziness on weight, being unwilling, my perception, or unable, due to staffing levels, to provide the same basic care as you would for a straight-sized or thin person. So that person works in healthcare. This person says, it's a fucking disgrace. No matter how amazing people can be to patients and families, there's still a judgmental undertone, and I worry if that transpires into care. Caring for a fat body has different challenges. I work in ICU, so issues around movement and skin fold care both come to mind. It's disappointing to be able to think of multiple examples of break room or handover chat between professionals, which is so degrading. I remember when I had my what organ did I have removed? Gallbladder. When I had my gallbladder out, waking up from recovery, and the nurse had ripped back the covers, and I was completely naked because she was looking at my wounds in a room full of people who and there was people a bunch of healthcare providers, I don't know if they were nurses or whatever, standing around laughing and stuff, and they weren't laughing at me, but they were having a conversation, and it was just that was just so, that's how I woke up, and it felt so uncaring, and that's because she thought that I was asleep, right? That she was it felt aggressively pulled the cover up and pulled my gown off or whatever. I don't know if the gown was already up or something. I don't know. Anyway, that's not. I don't think that was fat phobia. I don't know. Maybe it was. Who knows? Yeah. So, okay. So, hi, Vinny and team. Regarding your story, I'm working in a nursing home for intensive care patients. I've been working there for more than 5 years now, and to this day I have to work in my personal clothes because they won't provide fitting work clothes for me and 2 other fat colleagues. When the COVID testing centres opened here in Germany and staff were desperately needed, I wanted to help and work there, but I couldn't because they didn't provide protective overalls for fat people. They told me to wear a gown made of permeable fabric in which not all of my body would have been protected, while the straight-sized people got the overalls. So I declined because I didn't want to risk my health. Other than that, there's loads of diet talk at my workplace, which is annoying as fuck. Also, there's a lot of fat phobia regarding our patients. For example, there was one patient who gained weight and was then put on a diet. She was fed via gastric tube, which is common for a lot of our patients. So the doctor just reduced the amount of tube feeding she received. For months, she only received 500 to 1,000 calories a day. That is such little that is such little calories. She, of course, lost a lot of weight and everyone was happy. When she lost enough weight, she then received more tube feeding again and regained some weight, which made a lot of colleagues want to restrict her input again. I advocated for her and then that didn't happen, but no one understands that you can't just starve people for as long as you want. It's quite difficult to determine whether patients feel hungry or not, respectively. They oftentimes don't feel hunger at all. But still, 500 or 1,000 calories per day is just not enough for an adult. No, not even close. Thank God that this person was there to advocate for that patient. By the way, I didn't ask specifically for healthcare stories. I said any jobs, but it's interesting to show how healthcare is where a lot of this stuff is happening. Okay, so, hi, topic fat phobia at work. My bosses demand after an addiction prevention talk down in their office that I bring a kind of certificate from my GP saying I don't have a food addiction. This kind of talk is for addictions where your senses are impaired, so you can't take proper care of the people with disabilities that live in that home. Let me just restate what this person is saying. They work in an environment where they look after people with disabilities that live in their home. There was an addiction prevention talk at their office. Then their bosses demanded that the employee bring a certificate from their doctor to say that they are not addicted to food because they have a fat body. Because apparently, 1, food addiction is real, it's not. And 2, fatness is caused by having a food addiction. Which, 3, that even if fatness was caused by a food addiction and food addiction was a thing, that it would mean that you are impaired and you cannot look after a patient, a client. So I messaged back saying, what the actual fuck? Question exclamation times 100. This is horrifying. Food addiction isn't real and they presumably target you because they presumed that you were addicted to food due to your size. What in the fuck is wrong with these people? Did you have to get, quote, proof that you're not a food addict, or did they come to their fat phobic senses? This person responded, I got a certificate from my GP that I'm perfectly psychologically and physically conditioned to fulfill all my duties, and she was appalled that they demanded such a paper. But then she went on to tell me that I really should do something about my size. Yay. You win some, you lose some. My bosses at least never tried to walk that road again. I want to go around this person's workplace and just roundhouse kick all those bosses in their fat phobic fucking faces. Imagine! It is egregious. And then the doctor to say, that's fucked. But you are fat. And oh wow, have you tried not being fat? Like, wow, like kicking sand in your face when you're down. Whew, shit, that's fucked. Okay, I hear so many conversations about diet and weight at work. Some of this is relevant and productive as I work with elite athletes and we have registered dietitians on staff, but I have many colleagues who are not certified or trained to work with food and nutrition who talk about wanting to lose weight, going on diets, quote, cheat days, or being, quote, bad for eating, drinking certain things, etc. It's never been negatively directed at me, but I will tell you it makes me very uncomfortable to exist here being fat. I often feel out of place or that some people view me as lesser because of my size. There are also noticeable gender differences in attitudes about size and weight. And so I asked them about this, like, what did she mean about the gender differences? And this person said that the male athletes, they are more letting them eat more and less hard than they are on women athletes. Okay, so next story. I just started working in a primary care clinic. Of course, our healthcare system is rooted in fat phobia. However, I didn't expect the water cooler talk to be so heavy on the weight loss, dieting, hating your body talk. One tall, thin woman was complaining about the accuracy of her Fitbit in terms of calories burned, and I said, it doesn't really matter. What's important is that you moved your body and did something good for it. Her response was, actually, it does matter because I'm counting calories. The next day, she was showing off herself in a bikini from last year and from this year. See, last year? I mean, I was thin, but still a little pudge. Look at me now. And everyone says, great work. I'm so proud of you. And I sit there in my wonderfully fat body, enjoying what I eat and how I move and not feeling I need validation from others in the shape of before and after photos for my worth. Beautiful. Beautiful last sentence. I sit there in my wonderfully fat body. Yeah. I'd love it if a tall, thin woman showed me a before and after bikini picture. She would not get anything from me. I'd be like, I'm sorry, I don't understand. What do you mean? Oh, you think you look better because you have a smaller body? Why is that? I don't understand. Do you not like fatness? Is there something wrong with being fat? Is there something wrong with my body? Like, she would be regret showing that shit to me. And I get it. I'm not at your job, right? I'm not the one who has to sit there and try and not get fired. I would be coming in as an imagination fantasy character, someone who doesn't give a shit, who is not going to get fired by the boss, who can just magically come in and be like, poof, fuck you, and poof, off I go. In real life, if you're in an office, you can't be like, shut the fuck up, Karen, or, shut up, Tracy, with your fucking bullshit. Because, Tracy's going to be like, that fat person's bullying me because they're jealous that I'm thin, or something like that. So, yeah, just take a deep breath because all of them stories and all that stats this is a lot. It's a lot of discrimination. So, again, if you're in a workplace and you know that they might be open to this stuff, or even if they're not, feel free to pass on my details. One of the presentations I do is detangling anti-fat bias in the workplace. I talk about language. I talk about making the location accessible to people. I talk about all of those stats. I talk about how, well, if fat bias is so bad, why don't just fat people just become thin? So I talk about how that's not possible. And I talk about how to make a place welcoming for fat people. And honestly, I'm surprised by how positive, like in the last, I think I mentioned this before, in the last while, how previously, maybe 4 years ago, it felt very, people are like, fuck you, Vinny, for being here talking to us about fat stuff. Whereas now it feels more, oh, tell me more. Which is weird. It's strange. What? So, maybe times are changing and shit, that's not everywhere, right? that is not everywhere. There's lots of places where, I mean, there's all these stories. I would love to go to these workplaces and blow these people's minds. Even if the only person who benefits is the one fat person who is fat positive, who's like, yeah, fuck you all. You're all fucking biggers. Now there's someone in here telling you what giant assholes you are. That would be good, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be satisfying? Oh, I'd be so satisfied if I didn't do this and I worked in I didn't have a job that was related to fat activism, and then someone came in and spoke about this stuff. I'd be like so smug. So like, yeah. So in one of those, all of those resources, almost every single one of those studies that I spoke about have fatphobic language. One of the most frustrating ones was the one where it was about the 500 hiring managers and only 15.6% of them would hire a fat person. They had a section of how to mitigate the bias. And they said you have to tell people how you're not lazy and that you are a hard worker, and that you have to kind of tell them that you're the opposite of what their biases are. And I was like, fuck off. Really? Because the answer is, don't be a bigot. The answer is, don't discriminate. And yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, we want to get the job. But I don't think the advice to the general public about anti-fat bias is make yourself a more appealing fatty. Be a good fatty. I did an episode on the good fatty and bad fatty dichotomy. Good fatty is a fat person who performs a role that society finds them more palatable in. And there's nothing wrong if you happen to be a, quote, good fatty. It's not a thing, really. It's just the way society views fat people. A good fatty is a fat person who is trying to lose weight, who is self-depreciating, who says, I'm so sorry for being fat. I'm a lazy piece of shit. You're right. Please help me be thin. I'm trying to be thin. A bad fatty is someone who says, I'm not interested in weight loss and I'm happy the way that I am. And everything that goes along with that. So a good fatty could be an athlete. And so a fat athlete could have nothing to do with being a good fatty. They could be like, fuck you, I never want to diet. But the fact that they're an athlete means that they are given a quote, pass. Because they are seen as, well, at least they're trying to be thin. I mean, they could just be like, I'm not trying to be thin. I'm just trying to be a fucking world star athlete. Go and listen. Do you know what I really like? I like watching strongest men shows, the strongest, heaviest weight lifted by a woman. This beautiful fat black woman who's like 40. Go watch the video. Just Google heaviest weight lifted by a woman, and just go see that fucking athlete lifting, I don't know how many pounds, a lot, like at least 20 shopping bags filled with groceries, and the groceries are like pints of milk. So heavy weights. And seeing that fat out, and she's not like a bad. I think she did, and whatever. And so people might view her as, well, at least she's contributing because she's trying to lift weights or whatever, or someone who happens to like running, or someone who happens to eat a salad one time. But then if that same fat person then, is eating something which is not seen as healthy, then they'll be a bad fatty. So you can swing from bad and good fatty, within 10 minutes. It's the way that society views fat people. So it's not roles that fat people take, although we can perform in those roles for ourselves, for our safety. Example being hyperfeminine. Fat folks are seen as, slobby and lazy. And so to protect ourselves, sometimes fat femmes will play with gender so that they are less targeted, and not because they necessarily want to. And of course, a lot of people want to because it's fun or whatever, but some people don't want to, but they do it because they feel like they need to be seen as a little bit more put together than they would if they were just thin. If they were just thin, they could walk around covered in fucking human feces, and people would be like, fashion, oh my God, so edgy, she's so beautiful. And a fat person could be walking around like covered in fucking diamonds and, you know, and people were like, she looks a bit scrubby, you know, and it's just because of body size. Anyway, why did I get onto this fucking tangent? Don't know. Do you know? Do you remember why I got on this tangent? Listener? Don't remember. Oh yeah, about the thing. Like, this advice was to be a good fatty in job interviews. And I mean, yeah, if you want to do that, whatever, but I don't. But, you know, I'm saying that with a lot of privilege. I work for myself, so I don't have to deal with that fucking bullshit. Well, thanks for hanging out with me today. Don't forget, if you're thinking about going to Ko-fi to donate, to subscribe, I would be delighted. It would be delicious if you did a 5-month subscription so that we can keep the podcast advert free. You don't want to be listening to no shitty adverts halfway through, at the beginning, at the end. No, you just want the sultry sounds of me talking. Right? Do you? Maybe you're like, fuck off, I don't. I'm never going to listen to this podcast again. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Next podcast. Let's have a go. Next podcast. So we've got 9 subscriptions. Okay. $55 a month subscription value. Let's see if we can get it to, okay, here's a goal for next time. 15. Will you help me get there to 15 the next episode? Oh my goodness. 15 active subscriptions. Okay, let's see. How much would that then be? My math skills is so bad. That would be $85 a month. If you did $5. I kind of sounded like a zebra then, didn't I? You know, the sound of zebra is a It's pretty good, isn't it? Hey? Could have a career in impersonating zebras. Okay, I'm going to stop fucking talking about shit. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Show notes, fiercefatty.com/159. It's always the episode number. Or you could always just go to podcast and you'll find that shit for all the links to everything. And then check out social media in the next little bit for a roundup of all of these studies in case you want to share it and be like, fuck you, pay me. Yeah. So thanks for hanging out. See you next time. See you in a while. Alligator, stay fierce, fatty. Goodbye.